The EU, they've announced a new package of sanctions against the Russians, and I'll try and break this down in several parts because the sanctions come in several parts. Now, the first one is that the EU will remove Sberbank from SWIFT. This is huge because Sberbank is, Russia's largest bank, and they're trying to remove it from SWIFT. They're also doing it to two other major banks. As the head of the EU Commission put it, right, they want to hit banks that are systemically critical to the Russian financial system and Putin's ability to wage destruction. I'll play you a clip of her in just a bit. So that's the first part of the sanctions. It's basically to remove them from SWIFT. And again, SWIFT is sort of a messaging system. It's not sending money. It's basically saying, like, a transaction takes place, and SWIFT just makes sure that the value, the amount, and the time and the date of this are immediately implemented. And there are about 11,000 banks that are in SWIFT, and it's in 200 countries. And it was created, I think, in the 70s, mid-70s, right? So when you remove Russian banks from that, this is obviously a huge blow because it makes it so hard for them to deal with other banks internationally, right? It's really, really difficult. They have more fees. It's much slower. It's just really bad. It cripples businesses and so on. And the other part of the ban is Russian oil, right? So when it comes to gas, as I've told you many times, Europe gets 40% of its gas from the Russians. They also get a sizable chunk of their oil from the Russians. And while they're not talking about gas, the EU Commission, especially von der Leyen, is mentioning a ban on all Russian oil, okay? And this is, of course, very, very serious. In addition to all of this, they will ban Russians from buying homes and property within the EU. And when I read this at first, I was like, wait, you have to be kidding, right? They're not kidding. So if you are a Russian citizen, you are not allowed to buy any property anymore in the EU. The only people who are exempt from this are Russians that are dual citizens. So you're a Russian citizen and you're a citizen of an EU member state, or you're only a Russian citizen and you have residency in an EU member state. I've never heard of that before. I'm maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't remember them doing that with Syrians or Iranians or other, official enemies, that just by virtue of having a nationality, you are banned from buying property. Wow. Wow. And in addition to that, they want to ban 3 other Russian media outlets, right? So in this Politico article, they say 3 broadcasters will be sanctioned in an effort to curtail Kremlin propaganda. So basically, they are controlling the narrative now. Although I don't need to, I don't need to spell that out for you. You already know the game. You already understand what's going on. This is from Fortune. They say the cost of living crisis exacerbates Europe's quest for consensus over Russian oil embargo. So at the same time, they're slapping Russia with all these sanctions. I don't need to tell you. You already know this. The cost of living is going up in the States and particularly in Europe. I tried getting sunflower oil, sold out in the store, online. And of course, it's not the only thing. If you go and look at supermarket chains like Aldi, which is very big in Germany, they have Aldi Nord, Aldi Süd. They are raising the prices on many, many food items. I think it was, again, this is from a few weeks ago. It's probably changed now to include more. But it's between... on some items between 20 to 50%. And you might think that's nothing, right? Oh, no, man. A lot of people do not have this money. They have to pinch pennies. And this is a huge dramatic effect. And they were very dishonest about all of this, right? So in the beginning, they say, oh, yeah, well, this is a price of fighting freedom, no. And then after the deed is done, Biden's like, well, there are going to be food shortages. I never said this was going to be easy. No, you never said any of this. You never said anything about food shortages. I'm not trying to exaggerate it beyond what it is. But I think it's also kind of insulting and arrogant to assume that, yeah, everybody can afford these higher prices and it's worth it. Yeah. Says who? The millionaires. Literally millionaires. Like, I'm pretty sure she's well off. But other Democrats in the US and EU bureaucrats who are stinking rich, of course they can afford it. Of course it's an easy price to pay. In terms of Russian oil bans, okay, this is important because there are countries in Europe, there's a split. With the gas payments, for example, some countries said, no way, hell no, we're not paying Russia with rubles for their gas. And those countries are, for example, Poland and Bulgaria. Now, there are countries that are going for this. Among them are Austria, Germany, Italy, Hungary. You know, they're okay with this because they need the gas. And now when it comes to oil, look what's going on. So this is from CNN. And they say Hungary says no to the proposed Russian oil ban. Okay? So the plan immediately ran into opposition from EU countries seeking a longer transitional period, including Hungary, which has already been offered an extra year to ditch Russian oil. Quote, the proposal on behalf of Brussels is suggesting that it should be done by the end of next year, a spokesperson for Viktor Orban, the prime minister, told CNN. Quote, the shortest period, we've been clear on that, our oil companies have been clear on that, is 3 to 5 years. So you see what's going on? You have you have von der Leyen, the blonde woman I just showed you, the head of the EU Commission, who is, again, an unelected Brussels bureaucrat, basically like dictating to everybody, this is the plan now, and we don't care what capacity you're at, what your infrastructure looks like, what your needs look like, what your consumption looks like. This is the plan. We're going to do it by the end of the year. What fairy tale planet do you come from that you think you can just phase out Russian oil by the end of the year? Now, don't get me wrong. The dependence on Russian oil in Europe is not as bad as the gas. That they haven't even touched the gas. And I think that speaks volumes, right? Although, given the urge for self-destruction that you're seeing in the EU, like their urge to just burn everything down because they're not paying for it, I wouldn't be surprised if they actually started with that soon. Basically, this is the 6th round of sanctions. Okay? And at the news of this, CNN is saying that crude oil supply would be phased out within 6 months, right? That's what she's saying. And imports of refined oil products by the end of 2022. So basically 6 to 9 months. And they say here, news of the proposal boosted crude oil prices by about 4%. Brent, which is the global benchmark, was trading at nearly $109 a barrel, while the US oil futures were above $106 a barrel. Look at this. Oil prices have risen by about 40% since the start of the year on fears that Russia's invasion of Ukraine will deliver a supply shock, fueling inflation and piling pressure on European economies. Now, again, this is very true that the price of oil has gone up. Who pays for that? Consumers. I can tell you this as for a fact because when I did my report on Yemen, and I keep bringing this up so to urge you to go read it because you'll understand what's in store for Europe and the rest of the world. When you don't have fuel, you have inflation. Everything gets screwed because everything depends on fuel. And this is just a tiny taste of what is coming. And who pays the cost? Do you think it's the politicians? No. Do you think it's Russia? No. Russia's actually getting paid more because the prices have gone up. The people who will pay for the higher oil prices, as they say, 40% they've gone up since the start of the war, are the consumers. That's you, that's me, and I don't mean people who are filling up their tank. No, you don't understand. Everything depends on oil. Everything depends on fuel. Agriculture, industry, services. So the consumers, the peasants, right? Not fancy Mrs. von der Leyen. The peasants will pay for these higher costs. Do you understand? They're shifting that onto you and then saying, well, it's the price of democracy. Oh, really? That's funny. So you got all these billions of dollars for your friends to sell weapons, but you don't have that money to, pay the difference of the higher food prices that you insist on having and making sure because you don't want to. You told Russia to go screw itself when they sent you the drafts, the proposals in December, and you still won't engage in diplomacy. You just keep sending weapons. You're really funny. And now you want to sanction things, making the prices go up even higher. You're really funny. Now, again, you can still attribute blame to Russia. Go ahead. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but I'm telling you that you take a bad situation and then make it 10 times worse and then blame everything on Russia. This is ridiculous. Remember, at the start, in December 2021, the Russians were telling NATO, we want this, this, and this. And one of those demands was no NATO membership for Ukraine, no foreign NATO troops in other NATO countries bordering Russia. And they told the Russians, non-starter. That's the response they got. Non-starter. That means go fuck yourself. It means we're not even going to start a discussion with you. Non-starter. So that was the diplomacy. In any case, that's spilt milk. It's spilt milk. It's gone. We can't go back in time. We are here right now. And instead of engaging in diplomacy, they're just going balls to the wall. They're doubling down. More weapons to Ukraine. Keep arming the Nazis. Who cares, right? I mean, it's by principle, 1% of them are Nazis, supposedly, and you still giving them weapons? What does this say about you? And then more sanctions, right? Putin is not going to feel the sanctions. I'm laughing because I feel this is so silly. I have to explain this so many times. The sanctions target Putin in name, but he's not going to feel them. The people who are feeling them are ironically in Europe. And, I was speaking to somebody who's in Russia just a few hours ago. I asked them, how's the situation? Now, again, this is anecdotal and it's based on one person. Okay. I just asked them how they have been affected by the sanctions. And they told me it's not too bad. They're not feeling it as sharply as people in Europe. So take that with a grain of salt, with a pinch of salt, make of that what you will. But that's what someone who's in Moscow told me. Now, of course, you have to think there's going to be long-term effects and so on. But I'm just telling you that, the idea that, okay, we're going to punish Putin and everything's going to be fine, this is fantasy. And I want to go back to the article here. Hungary said it could not back this oil ban in its current form because it was worried about what it would mean for the country's energy security. Nearly 60% of its imported oil came from Russia in 2021. And so basically, they know that Hungary is getting 60% of its oil from Russia, and they're telling them you have to phase it out by the end of the year. What kind of logistical balls up is that? It's really ridiculous. Slovakia, which got 92% of its oil imports from Russia last year, and the Czech Republic have also sought longer transition periods than those envisaged by the EU plan. Russia is the world's second biggest crude oil exporter, and last year accounted for about 27% of EU oil imports. The US, Canada, UK, and Australia have already banned imports. Of course they do. Of course they did, because they don't depend on Russian oil or gas at all. But just to give you an idea of how volatile this is, just the news of the US wanting to ban Russian oil, it only gets 3% of its oil from Russia. It sent the oil prices up, and we were watching that live together, you remember? And then when they actually banned it, they went up even higher. They're saying here that Russia's ability to redirect all unwanted cargoes from the West to Asia are limited, meaning that in the case of embargoes, Russia will be forced to cut production further as it lacks storage capacity for extra crude volumes. This is from Rystad Energy in their report. That's their opinion. They're saying the surge in global oil prices and natural gas prices means Moscow continues to earn vast amounts of money from its energy exports. Pay attention to this. Rystad estimates that Russia will collect more than $180 billion in energy tax revenues this year, up 45% compared to 2021, despite the oil production cuts. So you see what's going on? Because the West is shooting itself in the foot for no need. They are creating the scarcity, and that's causing the oil prices to go up and the gas prices. And so Russia is still getting paid by Europe, but they're getting paid even more because the Europeans are the ones who drove up the prices. I've never heard of such stupidity in my life. I really... Why are these people so stupid, these bureaucrats? Are they stupid? Is there another game plan here? Me and Pepe, you saw us live the other day. We're scratching our heads like, we're not bankers. We're not energy experts. We don't work at, like Hunter Biden. we're not CEOs at oil companies, and yet we still understand the very basics here, and it doesn't make any sense. I don't know. One thing that my gut feeling, and again, I'm just speculating, although some of it came true, the reason they want to get rid of Russia is because they want the Americans to take a share of that market. Do you understand? There's two objectives here. It's not just money, it's geopolitical, right? So you basically divide and conquer. Instead of having Russia build Nord Stream 2 with Germany and they get closer to each other, or Russia gets closer to Europe, you dead that. You cut that off. You stop it. You separate them. You make Europe hate Russia and Germany hate Russia. And then you give them some of that gas. And let's be very clear. The gas, the LNG that the US is giving Europe is nothing. It's chicken shit compared to what Russia gives them. It's 10%, not 10% of what Europe needs, 10% of what Russia gives them. It's nothing. So this goes back to the problem of stupidity, because Europe does not have the infrastructure to get gas from other places. And when it comes to oil, they are asking countries like Slovakia and Hungary, who depend very, very heavily on Russian oil, to just magically substitute that with something else. Again, I don't understand this from a logistical point of view. I'm not trying to be snarky or say, oh, you're so stupid. I really don't get it. I don't understand this. What they think it's going to fall from the sky? You gotta love the straight up Russophobia. Like, Russians are no longer allowed to buy property. Wow. Now that coming from capitalists is really something. Like, we don't want your money anymore. What? Obviously, there's something to do with that. Now, the way they're going to market this to you, what they're going to tell you in the media is, oh, this is going to punish the Russian oligarchs, and this is going to cause bad blood between Putin and his inner circle and his oligarchs, and they're going to feud, and it's going to be very good for us. This is rubbish. This is Russophobia. If you took this sentence right here, where it says Russians will be banned from buying homes and other property within the EU, just substitute Russians for any other nationality, or you could say a religion or ethnic group, a religious or ethnic group. And would you not find that sentence disgusting and racist and xenophobic? You would, right? Imagine it said Americans will be banned from buying homes and other property. People would lose it. Americans would lose it. They'd say this is discrimination. This is unfair. It is. It is unfair. And if that happened to Americans, we'd say it's unfair because it is. But the fact that people they accept this, like they are saying this out loud. They have no shame. They say this like it's something normal. Like yeah, of course, Russians are banned from buying property. What? Imagine that said something else instead of Russians. Just pick whatever nationality or religious group or ethnic group and think how absurd that sentence would sound. This is crazy. This is really crazy. I am stunned by this open, brazen, callous, shameless xenophobia and hatred of all things Russian. Russian music, Russian tennis players, Russian nationals. What the hell is wrong with you? If everything you're saying about the Russians is true, that they are, it's a dictatorship and Putin is the worst, and they don't understand Western values. Let's pretend all of this is true, right? You are basically being just as bad, if not worse, right? Like giving you the benefit of the doubt. If everything you say about the Russians is true, this is just as bad, if not worse. How are you any better when you behave like this? And I want to say something else. You see here how they say 3 broadcasters will be sanctioned in an effort to curtail Kremlin propaganda. Who gets to decide what is Kremlin propaganda? Because right now, if you bring up NATO expansion, which is a fact, I can literally show you a map of NATO expanding after the Soviet Union ceased to exist. That is a fact. It's not an opinion, it's a fact. NATO doubled its membership after 1990, which makes no sense because NATO was created to fight the Soviet Union. There is no more Soviet Union. Why are you expanding? Why are you encircling Russia? Just bringing that up, people say that's Putin propaganda. So what does that mean? Kremlin propaganda, anything you don't like? Uncomfortable truths? Who gets to decide what that means? And you already remember they banned RT in the EU. And you could argue, well, look, YouTube and Twitter and all these companies, they have a legal obligation. They do. They have a legal obligation to comply with that. But the thing is, that's already bad enough. But the thing is, YouTube goes ahead and then bans RT Arabic and RT Espanol willingly, of their own accord. They're doing it for free, like with no mandate. Like, let's just go ahead and get rid of them all. Let's go. Wow, that says a lot. That really says a lot. And I want to show you the hypocrisy, how ridiculous this is. Because just 2 days ago, this same woman, van der Leyen, look what she was saying. She was saying on World Press Freedom Day, Europe stands by those who speak truth to power. No journalists shall be silenced or intimidated. Protecting media freedom and pluralism is protecting democracy. This is why we are fighting against abusive lawsuits and preparing a Media Freedom Act. Wow, you're funny. You're a funny woman. You're a funny person, right? You're a funny politician. So she's talking about media freedom and journalists should feel safe. And then 2 days later, she's like, I'm banning all of these outlets. Now, let me be very clear because you say right here that no journalist shall be silenced or intimidated. I can assure you, there are lots of journalists who feel intimidated right now. There are lots of journalists who are losing their jobs. Like RT America shut down completely. And what's insane to me is that, as many attacks as they want to lob against RT and so on, the funny thing is the people working there have more editorial freedom than if they were working at CNN or the BBC. And that's a fact. They would never be able to say those things on the BBC. You think I would be able to cover the Assange case at the BBC? You're funny. They won't even criticize their own government, right? All they're good at is lobbying attacks at the same old official enemies. So the funny thing is they want to criticize these outlets as state media, RT, America, RT. Those journalists there have more editorial freedom than you would ever have at the so-called free and objective and neutral establishments. So just want to put that out there. But I find it really hypocritical that the State Department and the head of the EU Commission, they're all coming out on World Press Freedom Day to say these lovely word salads, and then they do stuff like this, where they go and they ban broadcasters that they don't like. And of course, where this is leading, right? Because right now they say, oh no, you have nothing to worry about, right? You're not a Putin propagandist, are you? This is just a state broadcaster. Yeah, that's how it starts. And then it's like, oh, that guy's a spy. Oh, this he sounds a bit off. Maybe we should check him out, right? Maybe, we should look into his videos and what kind of tweets he's sending and all this kind of stuff. Maybe he's a spy, right? Maybe he's a propagandist. Maybe he's secretly doing this and that. This is how it begins. And then it's open season. And of course, I don't need to tell you what happens when the government suddenly has these sweeping, expansive powers where they can just call anyone they don't like a spy or a Russian asset. This is McCarthyism. I don't know if you guys learned about this in school or in college, but in the 1950s, you had a U.S. politician, McCarthy was his name, and he would launch these witch hunts, right? There were people he didn't like for whatever reason, and he would accuse them of being communist sympathizers or working with the Russians or the Soviets. And you could ruin people's lives with these accusations, really, because, this is the height of the Cold War. And they would use this against Hollywood actresses and Hollywood actors, people who weren't even in politics. Say, oh, you got some weird affiliations. Are you a sympathizer? And they would have these hearings, like a witch hunt, truly, these hearings, and they would, go after people in the politics, outside politics, and it was crazy stuff, right? And that's what you're seeing again right now. It's a reincarnation of this Red Scare. It's Red Scare 3.0. There were already two.